Star Wars Battlefront was one of the biggest releases of 2015. It generated a lot of hype and a lot of cash. So it's no surprise really that a sequel is pretty much confirmed to be scheduled for the end of 2017. Now, Battlefront 2015 was not a perfect release. It was subject to quite a few criticisms that resulted in the player base dwindling not long after launch. So here are a few things that Star Wars Battlefront 2 needs to do in order to succeed its predecessor. The first thing that Star Wars Battlefront 2 needs to have is a larger base content. Sure, Tatooine, Hoth, Sullust and Endor all looked pretty, but after playing on those 4 planets for match after match after match, it got old really quickly after just a few hours or so. The map variety has improved since launch through its DLC. We've had the Outer Rim pack, we've had the Bespin pack, we've had the Death Star pack, and now just recently we've had the Rogue One pack, which have all added new planets and improved the variety of content in the game. But the base product of Star Wars Battlefront is definitely lacking in terms of the amount and variety of maps to play on. I understand that using different planets as DLC themes is a good idea, and it's easy to market, but even putting that aside, there were already quite a few planets from the original trilogy that the game didn't even touch. Planets like Yavin, Alderaan and Dagobah, they're just 3 planets that weren't touched by the original game that were from the original trilogy of films. So developing maps from more planets in the Star Wars universe is definitely going to help the game succeed. This leads me on to my next point, which is that the game should pull from a wider pool of lore. Now, exclusively using the original trilogy for the base content of the game, yes, it keeps the game authentic and appeals to a wider range of people, but it also limits the amount of Star Wars lore that you can pull from. Pulling ideas from wider sources of lore like the prequel trilogy allows way more planets, way more weapons, way more spaceships, way more hero characters. You get my point. There's just so much more out there in the Star Wars universe that they can pull from, rather than if you just limit it to the original trilogy. The prequel trilogy might not be very good films, but like it or not, they are part of the Star Wars universe, and who knows, maybe a video game adaptation would be more successful. My third point is probably something that a lot of you will agree with, and that's space battles. They were included in the old Battlefront games, they were included in the Death Star DLC, and more recently the Rogue One DLC. Space battles are a quintessential part of Star Wars. I mean, it's in the name really. There is Star Wars, wars that are amongst the stars in space, you get my point. They need to be included in the base game at launch for Battlefront 2017 to at least have my vote. It's all well and good having fighter ship battles in close proximity of the ground, but it doesn't quite provide that same sense of scale that full-on space battles provide. The inclusion of space battles in the Death Star and Rogue One Scarif DLC have created an immense buzz for Star Wars Battlefront, and it's led quite a lot of people, including myself, to purchase the Season Pass even though after launch I had little to no interest in the game. The player count has spiked pretty significantly since these 2 DLCs launched with the space battles, so space battles really are a must for Star Wars Battlefront 2017. I also think that the game should be a little bit more complex. The main aim of the reboot of Star Wars Battlefront was to market to as wide of an audience as possible to generate hype, to generate sales. It was a massive marketing machine. One way to ensure that the game appealed to as many people as possible was to dumb it down to its core mechanics. So there's no class system, no weapon customization, a simple overheat minigame to replace recoil and ammo conservation, grenades and other equipment being on a cooldown system. The game couldn't really be more casual if it tried. This meant that a lot of players who were more experienced with first-person shooters got very bored very quickly and left the game for ones that offered more of a challenge after only a few weeks, which is why the player count tanked after its first month of being live. Adding in just a few features that I listed just now is going to help massively to give the game a little bit more depth to an otherwise very flat experience. And it's going to keep those players that would have otherwise left the game after only a few weeks, it's going to help keep those guys interested and playing for longer. The next Star Wars Battlefront should also contain a single-player campaign. Multiplayer is not everybody's cup of tea, and even those who primarily play multiplayer also enjoy a good single-player experience on the side if they ever get bored or they just want to casually play through a story. Look at Titanfall 2 as a prime example. The original didn't include the single player, but the latest release does include one, and it's regarded as one of the best first-person shooter single-player campaigns of the last few years. Star Wars is absolutely perfect for a single player campaign. There's so much lore that it can pull from within the original trilogy, the prequels, and even the comics, that a well-crafted story would do absolute wonders for the game. Not only that, but Star Wars is driven by its story, so having a story mode within the next Star Wars Battlefront game is one of the most important inclusions that it could possibly have. And my final point that I want to make, which might be a little bit controversial depending on which side you stand, but I think that Star Wars Battlefront 2017 will benefit if it doesn't tie in with Star Wars Episode 8. Obviously, tying a release of a AAA title with a coinciding Hollywood movie is going to work wonders for marketing, but in terms of practicality and quality assurance, not so much. Star Wars Battlefront releasing in sync with Episode 7 gave it a massive boost commercially, but it meant that the developers were pushed to complete the game at a faster than normal rate, meaning that, whilst it was polished, the amount of content in the game was incredibly low by today's standards. Not releasing with Episode 8 this time around would relieve some pressure from DICE, and allow them to spend more time creating a proper Star Wars experience that has a sufficient amount of relevant content that's bug-free. Who knows, maybe Episode 8 content could be introduced as DLC later down the line, just like we had with Rogue One, but Episode 8 content doesn't necessarily need to be a priority for launch. Allowing DICE to take their time with the game is going to be much more beneficial than if they were to be rushed off their feet to meet a fast approaching deadline that can't really be changed. It'd be a bit silly to push back the release date of a movie just because its game tie-in isn't quite ready yet. Some of these points that I've made here today might be a little bit controversial, so if you have your own opinion, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. I'll be sure to have a good discussion with you. As always, if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this, and I shall catch you in my next one.